How are you, child of God? This is the Remnant Seed Bible Study channel. Welcome. The subject of today's lecture is Titus, the subject of Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. I want to prove to you that this is just not even close, and I don't see how anybody can come to this conclusion. It's just bad reading. The subject is the second coming of Christ. And I'm going to show this to you, and I'll prove it to you. All right, and we're going to go through the timeline of Daniel's 70 weeks in relation to Mark 13, Luke 21, and Matthew 24. And this is your proof that Titus is not the subject. So we're just going to use Matthew 24. We don't need the other accounts of the end times in Jesus' account to the disciples. And let's just start with Matthew 24:3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, "Tell us, when shall these things be?" And he was talking about the end. "And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?" Now, you can't just simply inject Titus in here. The word world here is eon in the Greek. And Strong's, this is the word and the meaning that Dr. Strong gives us. It's eon. It's a span of time. It's the end of an age. And it has nothing to do with the world around Titus, or people use the excuse, the immediate world, Titus and Jerusalem. This is speaking about the end of an age, and not a geographical location. It's an age, a span of time. It's the end. And even in verse 31, it says, the sound of a trumpet, and this is a direct reference to the seventh trumpet. There can't be any mistake what this is about. This is about the end of this age and what's going to be the signs of Christ's coming. Not Titus coming, beloved. Not Titus. Not at all. And this couldn't be any clearer. The subject tells us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? And just to repeat that's the subject. You can't depart from it until verse 31. Okay? Subject is not Titus. It's the second coming of Christ and the end of this age. And Christ himself never mentions Titus. And beloved, keep this in mind. This is Jesus Christ speaking to us. And if you sit there and you try to change the subject and go in and out of chronology of this entire chapter, you are contradicting Christ himself. I wouldn't want to be there. The word world is described in the first verses of Jesus and his end-time dissertation to the disciples in Matthew 24:3 tells us there can't be any other time period applied to this end-time prophecy except for the very end of this age. And verse 31 actually refers to the seventh trump, and I'll go over that. I've picked out a few of the verses here that are really the keys to understanding and contradicting this notion that this is speaking about Titus. And also the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel, when properly understood, tells us that we're in the 69th week of the 70th week prophecy. So Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13 are yet future events, and this couldn't have taken place in 70 A.D. In the conquest of Jerusalem. They are to take place at the beginning of the 70th week and cut short to 3.5 years. And even for the elect's sake, I believe, is 5 months, as is spoken of in Revelation 9:5 and 10. The beginning of the 69th week started when Messiah was cut off or crucified. Titus' conquest of Jerusalem was not the beginning of the 70th week. at all. And Mark 13, Luke 21, Matthew 24 are proof of this that is still yet in the future. And here we've got the word world as it's used in Matthew 24:3. And this is verse specific. And that's what I like about having a hard copy of the Strong's. It's number 165, and it's aeon. And it means a span of time, an age, a space of time. And you see all the meanings. Beloved, it's not rocket science. This is not speaking of the end of a geographical location. And it wasn't the end of that geographical location anyway. And the stones of the Western Wall are still there, beloved. Some of those things they weigh tons. And I believe Christ is saying, I'm going to turn all this into sand when I come back. You ain't going to recognize anything. Pardon the vernacular, but all right. Now, let's go over these verses, the key ones that I've selected here. Matthew 24:8. All these things are the beginnings of sorrows. And Bullinger says this, that sorrows is birth pangs of a new age. That means the end of this age and the start of a new one. And that did not happen with Titus. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Now notice the word all. I mean, it's all inclusive. It's not talking about a region. It's talking about all of the world. But he that shall endure till the end of what? The end of this age, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom must be preached in all of the world, a witness to all nations, and then shall the end come. Now notice the words all the world and the end. This is speaking again the end of this age, not the end of Jerusalem, beloved. You can't just stick Titus in here. It doesn't fly. 15, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, and know that the end is near, and whosoever readeth this, let him understand. Now Moffat translates this, the abomination of the desolator, and it's speaking of Satan. It's not some kind of abstract concept. This is speaking about Satan himself, the Antichrist, standing in the holy places. 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 4 tells us. You can't stand a concept in the holy place. Now, this holy place, beloved, it can be taken two ways. Now, we know that the temple is the body of Christ, because Christ said, destroy this temple and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. So Satan can stand in your heart and claim to be God as well. But I believe this is referring to a physical Satan standing in what's left of the holy place now. Not the third temple. No. This is just speaking of the existing, what's left of the temple in Jerusalem. And also you can take this as standing in the heart of believers. And many believers are going to be deceived by this dude because he's going to claim to be Christ and he's going to fool even the elect if the time wasn't shortened. Verse 19, and woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And those days is referring to the end of an age. And I just did a video on what with child and giving suck. It's basically they're nursing along false doctrine, essentially the rapture, which is a false portrayal of lo, here is Christ, and lo, here is Christ. You say he's in the desert, believe him not. This is a reference to all the false portrayals of the second coming. All right? Now, verse 21, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time. And this time is referring to the end of time. Nor ever shall be. And there's no other time in history that you can apply this. This certainly was not the time of Titus. Verse 22, and except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved, but for the elect's sake, those days should be shortened. Those days, again, to the end of time and the appearance, this time that the Antichrist is here on the earth and deceiving people. He's going to be that good. Unless those days were shortened, the elect would even be fooled. Verse 23, then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. And that, like I said, is a false portrayal of Christ's second coming. They're actually telling you to wait for the wrong Christ. If they say, lo, he's over there, lo, he's in the desert, and you can still pinch yourself, he ain't here. I like to use that word ain't, beloved, because I'm just an old country boy. And verse 26, wherefore if they say unto you, behold, he's in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he's in the secret chambers, believe it not. And it's referring to this again. All these fairy tales of Christ's second coming. 27, for as lightning cometh out of the west, and shineth even to the, cometh out of the east, and shineth even to the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. And this is basically referring to the second coming, not Titus is coming, beloved. You can't inject Titus in here. Doesn't fly. 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days. What days? The end of time. The sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Yeah, I'm sure this happened during Titus' conquest. Come on, man. It's when you read these, it just becomes a joke. And the joke is on you people who believe this nonsense, who believe this applies to Titus. And it's amazing how they just forget to read the end of these verses when they do their dissertations on this. It's absolutely amazes me. They can just select verses like a spiritual smorgasbord, pick and choose the ones they want to apply it to the false narrative that they're giving to you. And I've seen this. I've been seeing this, and I've debated people over this, and I just cannot believe that they're actually portraying Titus in these verses. They're saying, this is Titus. Unbelievable. All right, now verse 30, this is unmistakable, beloved. This is speaking about the second coming of Christ and not Titus. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man coming in heaven. Didn't say Titus there. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with in heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. And this is a direct reference to the seventh trump. And you just try to apply all these verses to Titus, and beloved, it doesn't fly. Can you see that? Titus' time was not the seventh trump, and it wasn't the second coming of Christ. You can't stick him in here, beloved. This is just absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And pardon me if I get a little worked up, but I just can't believe this, the way they portray this. And this is Christ speaking again, beloved. Now, we got E.W. Bullinger here, and he gives you a dissertation, and I cannot do any better than this because I'm not a pimple on this guy's rear end, beloved. This is the scholar of scholars. Now here he goes. Let's just read this line by line, and I'll show you how that this applies to us now, because we're still in the 69th week, and the 70th week has not occurred yet. Now we got different periods here, and Bullinger describes this for you. And this first period is simple. It's being the 7 sevens, or 49 years in Daniel's prophecy. And the second period, the 62 sevens, or 434 years from 405 BC to AD 29, the year of the cutting off of Messiah. This was 483 years from the issuing of the decree in 454 BC. That is 49 plus 434 is 483 years. The cutting off of Messiah is stated as being after the 62 weeks. The word after here evidently means, and it's intended to be understood as indicating the completion of the period named. That is to say, on the expiration of the 62 sevens, will Messiah be cut off. Beyond this, the exactness is hardly necessary for us to go. And the third period, this is 1/7, that is to say, the 70th, or the last seven, which is still yet to be accounted for. That it must be yet future seems certain from the agreement of its events with those of the visions of chapter 7 and 12, and the numbered days of chapter 8:14, 12:7 through 11. Also from the fact that none of the 6 definite events of 9:24, which mark its end, has yet to take place. And these belong to the whole 77s and are thus connected with the 70th or last week being the object and end of the whole prophecy. The following 3, among other reasons, may be added. And beloved, I'm not going to go through these. Suffice to say, the one that we should be interested in, beloved, is the last one, and we're in the 69th week. And this and Bullinger does the best job I've ever seen of any scholar in the entire world. All right, now the last, or 1/7 of Daniel's years, is divided into 2 distinct equal parts, and the division takes place in connection with an event which has no connection whatever with any event which has yet taken place. Messiah did not make not the covenant of any kind, either with Israel or anyone else, at the end or after the 69th week, nor did he break any covenant 3.5 years later. Many make and break covenants, but divine covenants are never broken. On the other hand, the prince that shall come, it is distinctly stated that he shall do both of these very things in verses 9, 26, and 27. And in 9, and both are connected with the time of the end. Can be no mistaking. These are connected with the time of the end, beloved. Hence, we are forced to the conclusion that the last 7 of years still awaits its fulfillment. And this fulfillment must be as literal and complete as that of the other parts of this vision and prophecy. For the end must be the glorious consummation for Israel of verse 24, the complete destruction of the coming prince, the false Messiah or Antichrist, and the setting up of Messiah's kingdom. Nothing less will satisfy all the requirements of Daniel's vision of the 70 weeks. There you have it, beloved. And the Hebrew word rendered week is Shabua, and means simply a septad, a hebomad, or a 7. Hence, a week, because it is 7 of days, but in this passage, it is confessedly used of a 7 of years, and this of necessity, for no other 7 of any other portion of time will satisfy the prophecy and fall within its terminus a quo and the terminus ad quem. 70 of these 7s of years, or 490 years, are one subject of this prophecy. We are told exactly when they will commence and how they were to end. They sum up within their bounds all the then counsels of God to his future dealings with his people, Israel. For they are determined, the angel said to Daniel, upon thy people and upon the holy city. Verse 24. These words cannot have any other interpretation than all Israel. Verse 7. And Jerusalem and the holy sanctuary, for that had been the subject of Daniel's prayer, to which this prophecy was sent as a specific answer. And see verse 2, 7, 16, 18, 19, and especially verse 24. As to the whole period, Daniel is bidden by the angelic Hierophant, to understand and consider verse 23. While as to its three separate divisions, Daniel is to know, therefore, and understand. Verse 25. See the structures of these passages in pages 1196 and 98 and 99 of the Companion Bible. Okay, now we got a reiteration of this. The first period, the 7 sevens, are 49 years. These commence with the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. This was the first month, Nisan, 454 BC. Hananiah's report to Nehemiah was made in the 9th month, which is Chesleu, in 455 BC. 3 months before both months began in the 20th year of Artaxerxes. The Artaxerxes, or king, or great king of Nehemiah 1121, who issues this decree, is identified with the great king Astyages. Astyages was the brother-in-law to Nebuchadnezzar. The madness of the latter had at this time lasted for 7 years. Astyages had evidently in imperial matters been acting for his brother-in-law. This seems to be clear from the fact that the decree was issued in Shushan and not Babylon, and no one, however great a potentate he might be, would have dared to issue such a decree connected with the affairs of the suzerainty of Babylon unless he possessed the authority to do so. Therefore, it may be put thus: in Nisan 454, Astyages, that is to say Artaxerxes, the great king, issued the decree spoken of Daniel 9:25. Later in the same year, Nebuchadnezzar's madness was lifted off him. At the end of the days, his understanding and reason returned to him, and it seems as suddenly as he had left him. And he thereupon issued his imperial proclamation throughout his dominions, as recorded in Daniel 4:34 through 37. The 7 sevens, therefore, meaning 7 sevens of literal years, occupied 49 years. 454 BC to 405 BC equals 49 years. They began at 454 BC with the decree and end with the completion of the walls and the dedication of the temple in 405 BC. See Ezra 6:10 and 15:19. It must remember that the issuing of this decree took place long before Ezra appeared on the scene and before any of the subsequent decrees of the other monarchs, which all had to do with the temple, whereas the first issued to Nehemiah 2:1 had to do only with the city and its walls. In the second period, the 62 sevens, or 434 years, these follow on directly from the end of the 7 sevens of the first period and close with the cutting off of the Messiah. And the third period, the last, or 70th seven, this period is yet future and awaits the same literal fulfillment as the other 2 periods. Okay, and if you believe the first periods, beloved, you better believe the second. The first 2, you better believe the third period, which is yet in the future. And beloved, the little horn is the abomination of desolation. He's also called the Antichrist, and his role is a false Messiah, or instead of Christ. And you got these accounts of the abomination of desolation being spoken of in Matthew, and Christ refers back to Daniel. And this is the abomination of the desolator, standing where he ought not. And 2 Thessalonians reiterates this. He stands in the holy place. This is the abomination of desolation. Isaiah 14:12 is another witness to the same Satan, Antichrist, standing in the holy place claiming to be God. That is the abomination of desolation. And then I give you all the meanings of desolator and desolation in the Hebrew and the Greek. And beloved, that's the end of this lecture. And pardon me for trying to read so fast, but I like to try to get through these videos before I take too long, and because Around a half hour is basically the attention span of most people, and I sometimes read a little too fast and even confuse myself, and I'm sorry for that, beloved. But please, beloved, stop this nonsense of trying to inject Titus into Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13. It doesn't fly. And I just showed you here the absurdity of this. So that's the end of this one, beloved. Much love from me to you, and we'll see you on the next one.